I want to talk to you today about the question, is God a moral monster? And a little shout out, of course, to the author of this book. Listen to most of it last week. Kind of my normal is to try to find the big idea early in the week, and then I'll find a book that deals with this topic. And in this case, I got a book that deals exactly with this topic. I didn't get quite through all of it, but I recommend you read or listen to that book in preparation for your teaching this week. And if you read through the book, particularly of Judges, but truth be told, in a good deal of the Pentateuch, you might get the idea that in fact God is a moral monster, and it's what some of our enemies have said. Richard Dawkins famously said, "The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all of what he calls fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving, control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser." Come back to that word in just a moment. Misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, I don't get all those words right, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. Christopher Hitchens said it a little more succinctly. He simply said that God was guilty of indiscriminate massacre. Well, what are we to make of this? Well, here's my first observation. God did command the destruction of nations, including women, children, the elderly, and animals. Let's look at a few verses from our text. However, in the cities of the nations the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, do not leave alive anything that breathes. Deuteronomy 7:2 says, "When the Lord your God has delivered them to you, and you have defeated them, then you must destroy them totally. Make no treaty with them, and show them no mercy." Deuteronomy 20:17, "Completely destroy them: the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, and the mosquito bites," I like to say, "as the Lord your God has commanded you." God commanded it, and they did it. Joshua 6:21 said they devoted, kind of a technical word, means to put it under the ban or to completely destroy. They devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. And perhaps the greatest illustration of this in the past is Noah's flood. And we tend to think of Noah's flood in a kind of cartoony kind of way, in a pitter-patter of the wind. But here's a better picture, I think, of the Noah's flood. And if you read carefully in the text, you find it was a very destructive event. And you look at floods today. Here's a picture from Katrina, New Orleans, and you see the incredible destruction of the flood. And if you imagine if it just kept raining and raining and raining and raining, and it rained not only in Louisiana, it rained in Texas, and it rained in Tennessee, and it rained in the United States, and it rained in China, and the plates of the earth below the ocean shook, and water came out, and so on, and the whole earth was destroyed in a flood. We also read that this will happen again. 2 Peter 3:10 says, "But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything done in it will be laid bare." And this picture of God stands in contrast to what you sometimes read. I think this is a great book, by the way, Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortlund. And he talks about this verse, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble." The NIV says it. The ESV says gentle and lowly, and it's the title of his book there. Anyway, the NIV, "For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." And commenting on this, Dane Ortlund says, "Gentle and lowly. This, according to his own testimony, is Christ's very heart. That is who he is. Tender, open, welcoming, accommodating, understanding, willing. And it is true, but it is also true of him." Matthew 23:27. "Woe to you, teachers of the law, you Pharisees, you hypocrites. You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of bones of the dead and everything unclean." And in John 2:15, we read that he made a whip of cords, and he drove out from the temple courts both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned the tables. And you see this two-fisted character character of Jesus and this two-fisted character of God, that he is on one hand loving and altogether lovely and kind and gentle and gracious, and also he is a God of wrath who will not leave the guilty unpunished. So we see observation number one, sometimes God did exercise his justice. Observation number two, the destruction was not ethnically motivated. It was not ethnically motivated. And this is the one verse we want to look at. We could have gone a number of ways from today's passage, but we're looking at Genesis 15:16. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. And in contrast to what Richard Dawkins say, I want to say it was not the skin of the Amorites. It was not their skin color. It was not an ethnic issue. It was not the skin of the Amorites. It was the sin of the Amorites. The sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. And I'm going to wait 400, 500, 600 years before I destroy these people, because I'm being patient with them, not wanting anyone to perish. Now, the question it raises is, what is the sin of the Amorites? Well, theologians who have studied this believe that it was probably child sacrifice. It may have been also temple prostitution, but that's another topic for another day. I want to talk for a little bit about child sacrifice. Deuteronomy 12:31 says, they even burn their sons and their daughters in the fire as sacrifices to their gods. Apparently, they had such a weighty sense of guilt. I've read a number of lots of psychobabble books. And one of the questions that'll sometimes come up is, how do we help people deal with, and sometimes they'll say, deal with the feeling of guilt. How indeed will we help people to deal with this incredible feeling of guilt that we have as humans? Well, I'll tell you how to deal not only with the feeling of guilt, but with the guilt itself, and that is on the cross. But at any rate, at this point, the people had such an incredible feeling of guilt. They dealt with it by saying, maybe if I sacrifice my son, if I sacrifice my little daughter, God will forgive me if I will do that. And God looks down from heaven and, like Popeye, do you remember what Popeye used to say? Somebody be mistreating his wife, Olive Oyl, and he would finally say,
that's all I can stand. I can't stand no more.
It's all I can stand. I can't stand no more. And I believe that's what God is saying here. Well, what was the situation? The Lexham Research Commentary says child sacrifice was an important part of the Phoenician religion and a lot of those religions in the ancient world over a long period of time. A large cemetery dating 400 to 200, going backwards, BC, 400 to 200 BC in the Phoenician city of Carthage contained 20,000 urns with cremated remains of 20 to 40,000 children as old as 4. The inscriptions at the site indicates that they were children sacrificed to the Phoenician god. Leviticus 18:21 says, "Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech, for you must not profane the name of your God. I am the Lord." And you look at this picture of Molech here, and it's not hard to see that there's a place for a fire in the bottom, and it's a metal statue. And as one YouTube channel I listened to talked about how they would take these babies and they would put them in the arms of that idol until they sizzled to death. And God says, I can't stand it anymore. Plutarch says about this, with full knowledge and understanding, they themselves offered up their own children, and those who had no children would buy little ones from poor people and cut the throats of those little ones as if they were so many lambs or young birds. Meanwhile, the mother stood by without a tear or moan. But should she offer a single moan or let fall a single tear, she had to forfeit the money, and her child was sacrificed nonetheless. And the whole area around the statue was filled with the loud noise of flutes and drums, so that the cries of the wailing would not reach the ears of the people. And you know, when atrocities happen, sometimes people cry out and say, why doesn't God do something? And sometimes God does do something. Sometimes he steps in on the stage of history and says, I can't stand it. I can't stand it any longer. And sometimes when God steps onto the stage of history and directly causes people to be punished for their sins, sometimes people will say foul. I remember feeling this way a few years back when I read this headline, Islamic State beheads Egyptian Christians in Libya. U.S. condemns, of course, such killings. And you see this picture here. You remember seeing these on the news years ago, these Christians on the beach there. And they didn't show a video of them actually being beheaded, but they did show a picture of the water stained with the blood of these martyrs. And I don't know how you feel when you watch that, but I feel like God ought to say, I can't stand it. I can't stand it any longer. Well, what about us? We're not guilty of child sacrifice. Well, I show you this picture. This picture of a little baby in her mama's womb. And the situation here is in America that baby has no legal protection in our day. Now, the good news is the number of abortions has gone down in recent years, and that's good news, but there's still something a little less than 1 million, I think, abortions per year. God would be well within his rights to punish us. We read about God that he is gracious and compassionate and kind, but he also has this issue of justice. Exodus 34:6-7 says, he passed in front of Moses proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. My son sent me this video last week that illustrates the idea that when we see bad things happen, there is something in us that cries out to say, enough is enough.
Now understand something. I'm a flight attendant. That means I attend the flights. Sometimes our job has us attending to crazy people. If you push us too far, you're gonna have to attend this whooping. You see, because on this particular flight, I'm sitting in the jump seat and I'm just looking at him act that fool. He's spitting and cussing and going crazy. I say, that's enough. I got up and I walked over there. And by the way, this man smelled like a pack of Marlboro cigarettes, 4 shots of Everclear alcohol, and regret. So I know something's about to go down. At this point, he touching all over my co-worker's breast. And where he f***ed up at is when he touched my titties. Because I don't play that. So what I did is I took out the duct tape. I said, he got scared, started stuttering, say, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right. I said, yeah, we about to mummify now, boy. So we wrapped him up. Better than any Christmas present you ever see. He won't be coming on no more Frontier flights at all.
All right, observation number 1, God did command the destruction of nations, including women, children, elderly, and animals. Observation number 2, the destruction was not ethnically motivated. Observation number 3, anyone who repented could be forgiven, spared, and granted entrance into an eternal heaven. We see this illustrated in the life of Rahab, where we read in Hebrews 11:31, by faith the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. And the Bible clearly teaches that if we will confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. Observation number 4, no one is truly innocent. There was a popular book several years ago, sold 4 million copies. It says here, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Tries to address the question, why do bad things happen to good people? And the answer could be given in the form of a statement I heard one of my seminary professors say, trot one of them out here. Trot one of those good people out here, because the Bible teaches there are none of us who are truly good. Psalm 51:5 says, surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me. Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Isaiah 53:6, we all like sheep have gone astray. Each one has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. And Ezekiel 18:4 says, the one who sins is the one who will die. Every breath we breathe after the first sin is an expression of grace. And the question is not, if we understand ourselves biblically and the issue of sin biblically, the question is not, why did God kill them? The question is, why does God graciously allow us to live? How could he love us so? Last observation number 5. God reserved the worst punishment for his son on our behalf. You see, every other punishment, every other atrocity, every other tragic death, we could say of that person that a sinner died. But in the case of Christ, in the case of God's own Son, it was not a sinner who died. It was a sinless one who died. 2 Corinthians 5:21, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Romans 5:8, God demonstrates his own love for us. While we were sinners, Christ was not a sinner, and Christ died for us. And I closed my time with my people this week by singing together this great old hymn of the faith, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, and invited our people to think about what Christ did for us on the cross. And may God richly bless you as you tangle with this important issue this week.